Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. Now, usually I have a bunch of plans for my reading. I always know each week what books I'm hoping to pick up, but this week there's a few unknowns. Mainly, we are thinking about later in the week going away on another bit of a house hunting trip. And if that happens, it will affect my audiobook reading, but also because we are often sleeping in the back of the truck and living on solar power, I usually like to have ebooks to read. So I was thinking this week to start with my Cosmere rereads that I want to do, but all of those are ebooks. So I'm kind of thinking that I shouldn't start those yet, just in case I need them for later. So then I have these two physical books that I was going to read in like the last week and like maybe that week that leads into May. So I guess maybe I'll start these instead. Probably this one, although maybe I'll take this one away with me if we go away because it's a nice little short read, although it's a horror. Is horror good to read if you're sleeping in your car or sleeping in the middle of nowhere? Probably not. Anyway, so that means I'll probably be picking up Tall Bones, which is actually, I've forgotten the title this ended up being published as, because this is an ARC that I found at a book fair, and I mostly bought it for the symmetricalness of it. It's got like a symmetrical spine, and it's like I think maybe YA mystery thriller, some kind of murder mystery. A girl from a small town has gone missing. I don't really remember the exact synopsis, and I feel like for a mystery, that's probably the best way to go into it. So we'll be reading this one first. Then for audiobooks, so usually when we go away, I don't get really any audiobook listening time. So I was planning for this week to be reading House of Flame and Shadow, but one, that's really long and I don't really want to get into it if I'm not going to be able to finish it. And two, I've got that from Audible, so I can kind of read it anytime. I have another book from the library that I think it needs to be returned in the next week or so, so I think actually I'm going to start with that. And that is The Dreamers, I think by Karen Walker Thompson. And this is some story where like people just start falling asleep and then staying asleep, and then the world all starts to fall apart because everybody's asleep and they're not doing their jobs and like nothing's getting looked after anymore. So I guess that and The Dreamers is where we're going to start our reading, but possibly I'll still be able to get to the rest of the things by the end of the vlog as well. This might be a slightly longer one. But if I can get through all of these, like amongst all of these is the remainder of the books that I need to read to fulfill my Magical Readathon Orilium Readathon prompts. So that would be nice too. Okay, so I've read hardly any of Tall Bones, but I am 40% of the way through The Dreamers, so I thought I better update you before I get too much further through that, because tomorrow I have my infusion, which means a long walk to the hospital and back. Just a regular thing there, but I like to walk and it's a long walk, so I should get through a lot of my audiobook. Probably I won't finish it, but we'll see how far through I get. And I will also take my book. This book? We'll think about it. But anyway, The Dreamers. So I think the problem with this book, it's not good when you start talking about a book by talking about the problem. So this was published in 2019, and it's kind of taking on this thing where, like an illness, where these characters are all just suddenly falling asleep. It's treating that like a pandemic, and I feel like if you read this in 2019, you might have found a lot of the ideas that it was putting forward about a pandemic as quite interesting and insightful. But of course, since 2019, we all have some quite different experiences with regards to that. And so, like, I'm trying to keep in my mind as I'm reading it that it was published in 2019, and when I do that, I can see some bits where I feel like, oh, yep, you got that. You knew that was going to happen. Well done. But also a lot of it just feels boring, like nothing new, because, well, it might have been new in 2019, or it might have been something that like gave you a different perspective on things in 2019. In 2024, it's kind of old and so that aspect of it isn't quite as interesting. As well, from a character perspective, it's not really holding my interest because it's following like lots of different characters and you're kind of jumping between them very quickly. And I saw someone else's review saying that that's what happened in this book, and it kind of made me think about When Women Were Dragons, and in that book I had really wished that it had had more perspectives. So I was hoping that The Dreamers would be better because it had all the perspectives, but it just doesn't give you enough of any of those characters to feel connected to any of them. And also, it's just a lot of characters to hold in your head. Maybe this is another one though where it's worse because I'm reading it on audiobook. But so far, 40% of the way through, and I'm kind of not feeling it, mainly because it hasn't done anything interesting with the dreaming aspect. So it's saying that these people are all falling asleep and they are dreaming, but is it going to do something interesting with the dreaming? I think if it does, then I might like this. If it doesn't, I'm going to wish that I DNF'd it. But I'm not going to give up yet, so we'll see. The other thing that I did is last night I did start Tall Bones, or whatever the other title is. I've read the first 3 chapters, which is only 22 pages. And really all I got so far is this girl left her friend at this party and her friend was like, it'll be fine, I can get a taxi home. And then her friend never came home. So she kind of feels like she's to blame for her friend going missing. And we're also getting her friend's mother's perspective, and it seems like her father is really abusive. The son, we get the son or the brother's perspective as well, and he seems suspicious. And also like a little shit. Then we did also get a little bit of the sister or the friend before she went missing, and honestly she seems like a really horrible person. So I did also see a review of this one where someone said all the characters are really unlikable, and I will admit if this girl who's gone missing is really unlikable, it is going to be hard to feel bad that she's gone missing and hard to worry about what's happened to her. But I can enjoy stories with unlikable characters as long as I feel like there's a point to their unlikableness, rather than just like, oh, I'm so edgy and wrote an unlikable character or wrote a bunch of like toxic, horrible characters. Like if it has a point, it's okay. But if it's just toxic characters because some people enjoy reading about horrible toxic shit, then I'm not going to be into it. So I don't know. We will read a little bit more of it, I guess, and see where it goes.
From the top, hit restart. So far it's been so hard to live, but lately something in me changed. Let it go, let it be. Don't fight your way back in. Let me go, let me be. It's time that we begin. Welcome to a new life.
Hello, so it has been like a week and I didn't update you the whole time we were away or for the last couple of days because we've just been all about houses and no update yet. We're just seeing what happens. But anyway, I was going to say, because we were so focused on houses, that I didn't do much reading, but actually I have a lot of things to talk about. So firstly, I finished off the audiobook of The Dreamers, and honestly it was about a week ago now, so I don't remember everything, but part of that is because it just wasn't very memorable, and I really do wish that I could have read this pre-2020 to see, like, in a 2019 mindset whether it would have been interesting. But I just think there weren't enough moments where it felt like it was being very insightful about pandemics, and it didn't do anything interesting with the dreaming. It kind of hinted at trying to do something, but it didn't do anything. And because it was just trying to cover so many different characters' perspectives, you never really felt very connected to any of them, and there wasn't very little character development. There's even one of the characters does die, and it just flies right past, you don't even care. Or like, I can't imagine anybody reading that and really feeling the emotional impact of it. So I just don't think for like a character focused reader that it had enough character development in it to make it interesting. But for me, like a plot or a concept-based reader, it didn't really have enough plot or concept either. But again, maybe that would have been different in 2019, but we are in a different time now. Then as well, while we were away, I read a bunch of Sanderson things on my Kindle. So firstly, I read Allomancer Jack and the Pits of Eltania. This one was just super short and kind of fun. It's like a story that some kind of adventurer has written and like is obviously published in the world. It's being published in like newspapers or whatever in little episodes, and we're getting like a bind up of several episodes, but there are references to previous episodes and things that have happened in the past. But it's also written in a way where the main character is making a lot of claims about the adventurous and heroic things that he's doing, and there are footnotes from the person who's kind of putting the story together, like questioning the feasibility of some of these heroic feats, but also like admitting that some of it has to be true, and also often criticizing his writing, which I think is a really fun thing for Brandon Sanderson to have added in. There was another book I read. Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. Alcatraz constantly criticizes Brandon Sanderson's writing. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. I will say the mechanism for reading footnotes on the Kindle was a bit annoying. And I think sometimes took away from the fun of the footnotes, but at least I could read them. The footnotes in Alcatraz, the fifth one especially, I think, had lots of footnotes, and I couldn't read them in the Libby app. And Allomancer Jack would not be the same story without the footnotes, so make sure if you're reading it that you can read the footnotes. But it was a lot of fun, but at the same time, like, didn't really have any substance to it. It was just a bit of silliness, quite short, just pure fun, nothing else. Then I read, what's it called? The Shadows of Silence in the Forests of Hell. So this is not a fun one. Although it kind of has in some ways a similar Western feel. I think it's maybe just because in the middle of these forests there are these way stops and they have that kind of Western bar feel to them. So these forests are a very dangerous place, and they are full of these like ghost type things. And if you walk too fast around them, or especially if you spill blood, suddenly they will like swarm you and attack you. And we're following this like older woman who runs the way stop, but she's also kind of a secret bounty hunter. And when she tries to collect a certain bounty, a lot of things go wrong. So I really did like this one. Again though, I would say it was super short. I can definitely see a lot of potential in this world, and reading some of so I'm reading it in Arcanum Unbounded, and it has like little introductions to each world and talks quite a lot about how the magic works. So if you're really into the Cosmere and you haven't read these short stories as part of Arcanum Unbounded, you're missing a lot of like world building, the presentation of someone's research on these different worlds. And from that bit, I get the feeling that the world in this novella is going to play a bigger part in the Cosmere. It already is kind of related to the Sunlit Man, which was one of the secret project books. But I'm hoping, and I think there will be more of that world. And I think it's really cool because the world was really cool. The story was also good, but it was a lot of action. I'm not really an action reader, as you know, but I did really like the concepts. So I'd love to see more of the concepts, because a novella, I just didn't quite get enough. And then as well, I have started Shadows of South by Brandon Sanderson, which wasn't really on my TBR for the month, but I had the ebook, so I just decided I would read it. And I've only read the prologue and maybe another chapter. We haven't even really gotten any of present time Waxilium. I think I keep calling him Waximilian. Anyway, we haven't got any present of him. We got like the prologue was his past, and then the first chapter was this other criminal guy trying to sell his services. To be honest, sometimes I think that Brandon Sanderson's way of looking at criminals is not very realistic. I'm just not sure that these criminal underworld, like, there'll always be this city and then so many different crime lords and criminal underground gangs. And I'm like, how are this many gangs really sustaining themselves on a city that I don't really think is meant to be big enough? And just sometimes the way the crimes are like negotiated, or how people are talking, doesn't always feel real to me. And there was also, in the prologue at least, a lot of action. As I said, not a fan of action, and I really don't know where this book is going to go after the first book in the series. I don't feel like anything's been set up yet to be like a bigger series focus. But as I said, not far, so I will continue that. I was going to say lastly, but I've got 2 more things to talk about. Nextly, we have Tall Bones. So this, I'm not, maybe 25%, let's say 25% of the way through. To be honest, I'm not really liking it. I was thinking about DNFing it, but I haven't decided yet. It seems like this is actually about homophobia and extremist church or extremist religious beliefs, because this girl that's gone missing, her brother is gay and the father is quite extremely against that, and I'm just not sure that that's something I want to read about. And it's also like following so many different characters and kind of their toxicity and their dysfunctionality. So we're getting like all the siblings' perspectives, the friends' perspective, the parents' perspectives, and each one of them has many problems, but there hasn't really been like much revealed yet, or we haven't really gotten into the mystery of what's happened to this girl that's gone missing. And I think when I read like a mystery thriller type book, I want the mystery, and I don't really enjoy reading that much about dysfunctional characters. So I don't know. I mean, I should have known from the fact that it's like an upside down church on the cover that it was going to be about religious extremism, and I don't necessarily mind reading about that when it's either really twisted or it's doing interesting plot things, but this isn't yet. But maybe it's gonna come. I guess we'll see. Then the other thing, I started the audiobook. Where's my phone? Over there. Hang on. I started the audiobook of House of Flame and Shadow, and I am, oh, it's audible so I can't tell, I think about 15% of the way in, so that's not very far. It's a really long audiobook. And I'm now wondering, I think now the only Orilium prompt I need to complete is the Zodiac Recommendations one, which is House of Flame and Shadow. Am I going to get it done by the end of the month? I'm not sure, because as well, it's really boring. And I knew this is what I was getting myself into. Like, I really loved the first book, House of Earth and Blood. I really liked the world. It's kind of like an urban, like a modern fantasy world. So a full fantasy world, not our world, but with a lot of our modern technology. And we're following this party girl, Bryce. And I really liked Bryce, even though in real life I don't know if I would, but I liked her as a character, and I liked the murder mystery and the bigger world epicness that was going on in the first book. The second book, though, got kind of unfocused, and we got a lot of different characters' perspectives, and I hated the second book. The third book, so far, has been more of the same. Bryce, our main character, is off in some tunnels now. She was having a big, long conversation with people. Now she's in some tunnels. It kind of just feels a little bit like filler so that she can get to know some other characters, but like it's not really, like I'm sure once she gets to the end of the tunnels they'll find something important, but like the actual like traveling through the tunnels, is it important? Not really. The other characters, I don't know, they're all doing stuff, but none of it matters. I'm sure it will matter. But even my camera battery was bored of talking about House of Flame and Shadows. So, I don't know, I'm going to continue it for a bit. The audiobook is quite well narrated, and I do think the world building is amazing, and I actually think there probably is a good plot in there. It just needs to be like massively condensed down, and I personally really wish we were just getting it still from like one person's perspective, so ideally Bryce's perspective, because she's still the most important, and I can barely even remember, I was just reading it. I can't even, like, I know what the other characters are doing, but is it important? It's not interesting. Anyway, now that we are home again, I think I should have some reading time, so I will try and finish all these things off. How many things am I reading now? Just 3. That's not too bad. Hello, so it's been a while since I updated you, mainly because I haven't been reading that much. I've been quite distracted by house things, even though we're not making very much progress. Anyway, firstly, let's talk about Tall Bones. This I managed to push through so that now I only have 100 pages to go. I do feel like maybe this last 100 pages is where things are going to get exciting. I'm hoping. I have been quite frustrated. There's quite a few bits in this book where a character will go to think about something or they'll find something that's obviously a clue, and then it just doesn't tell you as the reader the clue, even though the character whose perspective you're following, they know. And because you're not getting any of that, like I don't feel like we're even getting the chance for there to be any twist, because anytime we're like on the boundary of a twist, we pull back and say, oh, we're not going to tell you. So it's kind of frustrating. And then just kind of the story about these characters in a small town with a lot of like bigotry and prejudice. It's just not the kind of story that I really like to read. So I don't know, I'm pushing through because I own this physically and I kind of want to keep it because of the cool reversey nature of it, but I feel like I can't keep it until I've at least read it. But as I said, hopefully this last 100 pages is going to come through for me. The other thing I've been doing is trying to read Shadows of Self. To be honest, I am making terrible progress with it. I'm not sure if it's just because I keep trying to pick up my Kindle just when we're going to sleep. So like we turn off the lights, then I pick up my Kindle and read a bit before I go to sleep. And mostly I tend to be falling asleep pretty quickly. Is it because the book is not interesting me, or is it because I'm just tired? I'm not sure, but I will say the book isn't really interesting me. I just feel like it's really unfocused. I think last time I talked about it, I said that nothing had really been set up as the focus for this series or for the book. And there is actually a bad guy that was introduced at the end of the first book who Wax is still kind of looking for. And we have also had now these new murders that Wax and the other characters are trying to investigate. But it feels very unfocused. And part of that is that we're also getting other characters' perspectives. So we're not just getting Wax's perspective, we're getting Wayne and we're getting Maressi. And Wayne's chapters are always so kind of nonsensical because him as a person doesn't really make sense. He's always like thinking about things in quite weird ways, and then always wanting to make trades of items for other items, even when the trades, he thinks they're fair, but are they? He's just trading like, I don't know, a watch for a paper doily so that he can blow his nose. It just, I don't know, it's not interesting. And then with Maressi's character, she's just thinking a lot about how nobody takes her serious as a constable. And it's fine, but it's nothing too deep. I don't know. I, though, have only managed to get 25% of the way in. So that's not very far. And I kind of think I'm going to have to spill that over into next week. The other thing that I've been reading is my audiobook. So I am now just past halfway of House and Flame and Shadow. I have bumped it up, I think, to like 2.5 speed or something. So I've only got, I think, 5 hours of actual listening time left, which I'm quite relieved about. Although also I wanted to finish that by tomorrow for the Orilium Readathon. And we're running out of time. And also tomorrow's my birthday. So am I necessarily going to spend a lot of time listening to an audiobook that I'm not fully enjoying? Probably not. I will say though, from about halfway, 40% maybe, things actually started happening. So really the first 40% was a lot of like characters having stupid conversations, kind of resetting you up for where the characters were in their current situation, and then like a lot of info dumping about the world. And some of that info dumping, like I'd still say the world is really interesting, but the way that the world is being presented and that the story is being told, really not interesting. Like I just don't find any of the characters' conversations interesting. Oh, and about halfway through, we also got one of these things that I was annoyed about in the first book, where Bryce has a plan. Does she tell you the plan even though you're in her thoughts? No, she doesn't. And then it's like, ha ha ha, I had a plan all along. I hate that. If I am in a character's head, I want to know what they're thinking, the whole story. That's why this one is annoying me as well. Anyway, I do think like now things are happening. There's a bit more of a plot, so it has been making me more engaged and more interested. I'm still not loving it, and I kind of doubt I'm going to. So part of me thinks I should DNF it, but also I think I'm committed just to finishing it off, and then I'll continue the series finished, even if Sarah decides she's going to write more. Consider it finished. It'll be another series done. I'm so disappointed that this series didn't live up to the first book, but what are you going to do?
Lazy Sunday mornings, hiding under covers. I don't mind staying in with you. Play your favorite movie, laying right beside me. I don't mind when it's just us two. That corner coffee shop we like to go. Late night walks with you to take me home. With you I never feel alone.
These little songs make me glad to call you mine, and you have got my head in the clouds.
Hello. So once again, it's been a while since I updated. Firstly, because of my birthday, and then a bunch of house stress stuff. So firstly, mainly, as you would have seen from the B-roll, we just went and enjoyed being very far away from other people and enjoyed nature. As well, though, I did get a book voucher from Jace, which I went to the bookstore. So he said that he looked at the bookshelves, tried to pick a book, but in the end it all just felt a bit too dangerous, that he was going to buy something that I didn't want or that I already had. So he got me a voucher, but then I decided to pick up Nevernight and God's Grave because I really love these covers and they've been in the bookstore lately, so I thought now is the time to pick them up. And I will try and pick up the third book, Dark Dawn, soon, so that I can have the whole set. So Jay said he was going to buy me these actually, but he remembered the animals on the front, but they weren't on the spine, so then he got confused. Anyway, I'm excited about getting some books for my birthday. I often don't get books, and I know it's because of that whole thing where it feels a bit dangerous to buy someone who has a lot of books and who's read a lot of books a book because you don't know what they've got. Anyway, the other thing that's been happening is house stuff. So for those of you who are invested in us trying to move out of Auckland and find a new house, we have made another offer on a house. It seems like it's going to be accepted, but we're still waiting, and then we'd still have to do building inspection stuff. So basically, we're just going to spend like the next few weeks worrying about it, probably. And we've been spending like the last week really worrying about it as well. So it's just top tier anxiety, really. The other thing I guess I should update you on is my reading, but I've kind of forgotten what was happening since it's been a couple of days since I did any serious reading. But I did finish off Tall Bones, and it did kind of do a bunch of stuff at the end. There was a lot of action. I also found it weird though, because I felt like there's some people in this book who do some really bad things and there were no consequences for them, which didn't seem right. So in a lot of ways, it just felt quite incomplete, this story. And even though I do think the characters were quite well developed, I do think maybe it's really, or it should be, targeted at a younger target market than me. Because most of the stories are teen stories, and even though there's some fucked up things happening, like probably older teens might get something out of this. I don't know. I didn't. Because I just don't really enjoy reading stories about people in really dysfunctional, horrible situations, and it's really toxic and some horrible things happen to them, and then the end, yeah, no, I don't enjoy that, especially if there's no magic or like science fiction involved. What's the point? None for me. Then, so Shadows of Self, I think I've hardly read anything since I last talked to you, so we will stick this into the next vlog. And then the other thing I did do though is I finished the audiobook of A House of Flame and Shadow. And do you know what? The second half was better than I expected. I don't know if I would say it's good. It's really hard because there's so much that Sarah J. Maas does in these books that I don't like. I don't really like the way that the characters interact with each other. Like the whole second part of the book, Bryce and her love interest are having like this disagreement about things, and it's really manufactured and pointless. And just the way that she builds so much drama into the relationships, to me, doesn't feel like romantic or epic. It just feels annoying and immature. But if we put all of those parts of the story aside, I do think the world building is interesting. Maybe not amazing, but it is interesting. It's just so hard to focus on the plot stuff and the world stuff with everything else like overpowering it. But I do think there is a good core there. I just wish it had been like written by someone else or like heavily edited or something. But I do think the ending of that, so the ending of this didn't cover everything, but the ending of A House of Flame and Shadow felt like a very satisfying ending. I thought she managed to bring a bunch of different plot threads together in a satisfying way. Like, maybe it was a little bit predictable, but like, you know, it was better than I expected. Not as good as the first book in the series. So for me, I really loved House of Earth and Blood. House of Sky and Breath can go in the bin, a waste of my time. But I didn't mind A House of Flame and Shadow. But I do think that for me it's time to probably call quits on Sarah J. Maas. Like, I'm probably done. So anyway, that was my week or two, or actually who knows how long it's been at this point. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I talked about in this video, or just let me know how you've been going. I would love to chat with you down in the comments. And do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.